The good leaders know that they don't have all the answers, so they're open and they let people share and speak. And this doesn't mean you have to agree with somebody's lifestyle. It doesn't mean you have to agree with their politics, but it does mean you have to treat someone respectfully and value them as a fellow human being. At our core level, we human beings, we all want the same thing. We want to be seen, we want to be heard, we want to be valued, we want to be loved. One of the things they say, the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifferent. And that's where we go with no curiosity. We become indifferent to one another. I want people to care. And CARE is an acronym for conscious empathy, active listening, responsible reactions, and environmental awareness. And if we could just get more people to care about each other and themselves, I think we're on a much, much better path.
Welcome to another episode of Team Anywhere, where CEOs, leaders, and experts at building teams,
companies,
organizations,
and amazing cultures share how to lead from anywhere in the world. I'm your co-host on the East Coast, Ginny Bianco Mathis.
And I'm your co-host on the West Coast, Mitch Simon. And we invite you to join us to Team Anywhere. Hello and welcome to another episode of Team Anywhere. I'm your co-host on the West Coast, the drizzly gray West Coast, Mitch Simon. And on the East Coast is our amazing co-host, Dr. Virginia Bianco Mathis. How are you this day, Ginny?
This day, I am great.
I don't know what time it is over there.
It is 11 in the morning.
Yeah, that makes it morning.
It's cloudy.
Cloudy with a chance of clouds.
Right. Yeah.
All right. Today on the show, we've got the famous Karith Foster. Karith Foster is, hold on everybody, an American comedian, speaker, television and radio personality, actress, entrepreneur, executive coach, culture consultant, and the author of You Can Be Perfect or You Can Be Happy. In 2016, Karith founded the Foster Russell Family Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit organization which is committed to inspiring free speech, social change, and empowerment through education and mentorship. We're delighted to have Karith here to talk about INVERSITY, an approach that focuses on what we have in common rather than what might make us different. Karith, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you both for having me. What a treat.
Great to have you. Great. A lot of accolades. We're really excited. So first question we always ask is, what has surprised you the most over the last 3 years when the world decided to change?
Probably the extremism. And extremism on multiple sides, multiple levels. I've seen people just kind of lose their minds, and reason and grace go out the window.
A bit of hysteric.
And sane.
And sane. Yeah, that is the sad reality of what went.
But it doesn't have to be that way, which is the good news.
You are a force for change out in the world. You're a force for social change. What we know is you're a force for social change inside and outside companies. So want to know what you're most proud of, because there's a lot of things going on in your life right now. What are you most proud of? And we'd love to know your story of how you got here.
Absolutely. Well, I'm certainly very proud of the work that I'm doing. I'm proud of the way that I do it. There are a lot of people out there, a lot of people who call themselves diversity experts, DEI practitioners, belonging folks. And, I appreciate that everyone who's in it, if they're in it for the right reasons, that's why they're doing it. But I think that it's the methodology. That's something that we really need to see what's working, what's not. And it's why I coined the term INVERSITY. And it's the messaging that I take, because diversity is important. It's not that we should just, throw it out the door, but how it's done is what matters. And even, it's funny, I love to play with the words, being a humorist. I look at words, and the root of the word diversity is DIV, right? And think of the words that start with that. Division, divorce, right? Things that aren't really the goal, the end goal, certainly, of all these efforts. So I thought, if we could take the elements, the positive things that are included in the diversity movement, which is acknowledging, appreciating, honoring the different qualities, the different experiences, our backgrounds, our heritage, our abilities, all of those things that make us us, right? That make up our identity, expand the idea of what diversity is. So that's not just about somebody's ethnicity or their gender or sexuality, right? And include diversity of thought, diversity of ideas, right? Because that's part of true diversity as well. And if we could shift the focus from all of the things that we're looking at that separate and divide us to what is it we have in common? How can we be truly inclusive of one another, but most importantly and powerfully, introspective, meaning understanding your value, your worth, your connection to humanity. Because when you can see those things in yourself, that's when you can then see them in someone else. And I had to come to this journey on my own. And you asked me about my background. I jokingly say I'm a recovered journalist because that's what I got my degree in broadcast journalism. And I moved to New York City right out of school to work for the television show that we now know as The View. While I was there, I found stand-up comedy, or rather it found me. And comedy became a really incredible vehicle for doing what I loved, which was bringing people together, getting people to think. And of course, when you can laugh and think, that's where the growth happens. So I incorporate humor into this work, which a lot of people are like, well, how do you make diversity funny? Like this is serious. Well, it is serious, but it's also, the humor comes in part of, it's a connector. It's kind of like that glue, right? It's the binder. You can't make lemon chicken without flour and egg, and you can't have a good crisp coating, right? And that's what humor is. And it's universal, and it's healing, and it's cathartic. And, one of the goals I think so many comedians have is that to point out the absurdity of things in life, right? And with regard to the whole diversity conversation or inversity conversation, what's more absurd than hating someone or treating someone poorly because of the color of their skin, because of their ethnicity, because of their gender, because of their sexuality, because of their religion, All the isms and phobias and all those things are very much surface level fears that we've allowed to kind of hijack how we see one another, how we see ourselves.
Yeah, I love the in word, the, inclusion in love.
Not the inward.
The inward. And I do the absurdity, and I do appreciate as a comedian that it's through comedy that people actually can open up and connect, and it kind of releases inhibitions. There's another inward. So I'm just wondering, what are some things that you do, let's say with your groups or your audiences of thousands, that has them really rethink this whole topic of diversity or inversity?
Absolutely. Well, one of the things that I do is an exercise where I essentially have everyone acknowledge their bias, right? But I don't do it in a way that's extremely threatening, that puts people on the spot so they feel like, oh, I'm the only one, or I'm the outlier, or now I'd have to hang my head in shame and guilt. Because the idea behind the exercise is to prove that every single one of us has unconscious bias. And when we realize that, when everyone is able to acknowledge that, I don't say, no, go home and self-flagellate. The idea is to understand that, first of all, everybody has it, right? It's kind of like Oprah giving a car to the audience. You get a car, like you got unconscious bias. You got unconscious bias. We all got unconscious bias. So the idea is to be able to recognize when it comes into play, when it creeps into an interview, when it creeps into a new meeting, when it's happening, during an encounter with someone else, when you're watching the news, when you're driving your car and someone cuts you off, is that bias kind of coming into play? So when you can recognize it, now it's hard. You can actually give many of them a name. Believe it or not, there have been over 100 plus identified types of unconscious bias. And that's a lot. That's a lot, right? Excuse me. And it can be overwhelming. So the idea is not to overwhelm my audience, but to get them to understand, again, we're in the same boat together. And if you can recognize it, then you can mitigate it, right? And you can remedy it. Does that mean it's ever going to go away completely? No, of course not. We're human beings. Like it's ingrained in us. It's part of our survival instinct, right? We have to, figure out, is that person over there, going back to our cave people days, is that a warring tribe, right? Is that a saber-toothed tiger around the corner? Is my future going to be threatened? My bloodline, my, ability to feed my family? Like, what's going on. And while it may not be a physical threat as much anymore, it's an emotional threat. Am I going to be taken out of my comfort zone? And one thing that we as human beings do not like is to be uncomfortable. But the good news is discomfort is temporary, right? And usually after being a little bit uncomfortable, you're stronger and you're better. You know, it's like that butterfly coming out of the chrysalis, right? That has to suck for that poor little butterfly, trying to squeeze that little body through that tiny little hole. But guess what? After it does it, and if it didn't do it, it wouldn't survive, because the process of going through that little hole puts the fluid that's in the body into the wings so that you can be strong, so you can soar. And we have made a habit. You asked me what's surprised me most the last 3 years. And I say the extremism, but the extremism of victimization, right? Of making everybody a victim, of not giving people the ability to be empowered, right? The ability to decide what offends them, right? To be told you have to be upset by this when maybe it's not upsetting for someone. You know, to put someone in that kind of that chokehold of being relying on someone else's opinion of them or treatment of them or words that they use. That should have no power over who you are and how you see yourself. That should only come from you. And this fragility, right? That is almost kind of being indoctrinated into people, especially young people coming out of schools. I think it's terribly unfair, and it robs people of their agencies and of their independence and of their strength.
So true. And a question, and this is the one I've been grappling with since dealing with this entire topic, is part of Team Anywhere. What is our new reality? What is the workplace going to look like? And biases start coming in. Some of the biases are ingrained from, our own social upbringing. Others come from a reality. So I know that if you dress like that, you're not going to do well here. All right, that's just one minor example. I know that if you don't speak up in meetings, that's not going to be seen as a leader. No, I may think that's wrong. I may do things to mitigate it. What do we say to the individual? And it could be any of us at any time, right? Who looks at that and wonders, well, I'm not fitting in here.
So that's a great question, Jenny. And it's definitely something that's coming up in corporate America, right? Because we're asking people to be their authentic selves, bring their whole self to work. Yet, I think there also needs to be this understanding that there's a professional self and there's a weekend self, right? There's yourself with your friends and family at the, family reunion or picnic. There's the you who shows up for a board meeting. Now, with regard to the whole dressing thing, there has been a lot of controversy about, is someone's hair considered professional?
Right.
And, there you do have to factor in that different ethnicities do different things with their hair. That doesn't mean it should be unkempt, right? And so, the Crown Act, right, that's come into play, where Black women are allowed to wear braids.
Yeah, I just became educated on that myself.
Sure. And that's definitely that's one of the sides of this is why diversity is important, right? Because if you don't know that some people's hair don't do certain things, right, or that it would take chemicals to do it,
yes,
that could burn them, that could cause cancer. Like after when people have that revelation, they're like, oh, okay, that's why it's healthier for you to wear your hair in braids, right? Versus coming in with like a green mohawk and having people pay more attention to your hair than to what you're actually saying and the contributions you're making.
Very good point.
Now, there's another side that we talk about a lot with regards to diversity, which is neurodiversity, right? Which is really coming into play in these conversations. And, and when I say if we could expand the idea of diversity, because not everybody is an extrovert, right? Not everybody does feel comfortable speaking up in meetings. So the idea, and what I try to ingrain leaders with is, let's get creative. on how we can bring that leadership out of everybody.
Exactly.
So there's something that is called quiet meetings, right? And there are a lot of big companies that do. I think Bezos does it sometimes, where everybody comes in completely silent. They read the brief all together, and then they submit their answers in writing. And one person's selected to share the answers because some people may not feel comfortable. Not everybody's us. Not everybody can get on a microphone and, talk to the world.
I
And
just do what I do.
but there's, there are leaders who just don't have that aspect of their personality. And this always reminds me of, I'm totally dating myself, but like Saturday Night Live, and they used to have the Deep Thoughts by Jack Handy. Do you remember that?
Oh, I know. I knew you were going to bring that up.
And one of my favorite ones was, what if the world was run by dogs, but it was based on size, right? So like Great Danes were like the kings. He's like, that'd be kind of a shame because I bet there are a lot of Chihuahuas out there with some really good ideas.
Yeah.
Fabulous. And I love the silent meeting. I hadn't been reminded about that for a long time. That's fabulous. Thank you.
Absolutely. And that's all this is. Like, that's how this work should be. It shouldn't be about, lambasting somebody because they talk too much in a meeting or, shaming someone because they don't.
Yeah,
Right. It's how do we incorporate different people's learning styles, personality styles, so that the company succeeds, so that we succeed as an organization, so that we keep communication at optimal level. And right now, it is not happening. People are terrified to say anything because if they say the wrong thing, they're at risk of being canceled. And then sometimes if they say nothing at all, well, then you're complacent, you're compliant, you agree.
Totally.
It's this ridiculous catch-22.
What do we do? Like,
You bring me in to help everybody loosen up and learn how to literally. I feel like so much of what I do isn't even about diversity, right? It's about communication. It's about relationships. It's about leadership and development. And it is unfortunate that it is all under this diversity umbrella because the word diversity has been hijacked. Like, let's not, let's call a spade a spade. Like, it's been hijacked. And there are people who are totally abusing these programs. And they're doing so for power. They're doing so for money. And there's a lot of money to be made in DEI work. But it costs more money if it's done poorly. And that's what a lot of these companies do not understand because so many of the people who are in charge think, well, it's not about me. Diversity is not about me.
Right.
I'm a straight white guy. I don't know anything about this. No, it is about you because you're part of the community. And to be told that you're not is, I think, really crappy diversity.
Hey, we're taking a quick break to remind you to support our podcast by hitting the subscribe button and leaving us a review. Your feedback means the world to us, and it helps us continue to bring you more engaging and thought-provoking content for leadership and remote work. So if you were the Great Dane of the world and you had your choice in this small dog world, what would you do around DEI? What would you, if you were leading the directive, what would you tell people? Stop doing this. Start doing that.
That's so funny you say that. So I actually am getting ready to do a DEI detox webinar for my audience that I'm sure they'll be able to find once it's out.
Right.
How to avoid the mistakes of bad DEI. I think for so many people think it's a two-way street, right? That good DEI is when it's solely about focusing on someone's ethnicity, their gender or sexuality, right? Not the other aspects of who we are, because we're so much more than those things. Like, we're not monoliths, right? And to force people to identify just as one thing, I think that's criminal. And the other lane we get stuck on in this two-way street thinking is that if diversity is done successfully, then everybody agrees and we see everything the same way. That's the antithesis
Right.
of true diversity, right? I mean, how frigging boring would life be if we all looked the same, dressed the same, spoke the same way, acted the same way? Like, it's that's insanity.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more, I think of INVERSITY, right? It's more of a 6-lane highway where there's so much more room for learning, for growing, I learn something new every day. And if that's what especially leaders can take on, and I think the good leaders, they know that. The good leaders know that they don't have all the answers. So they're open and they let people share and speak.
Yeah.
It's the bad leaders who are the ones who are like, well, I've got this. Like, they one of the biases we talk about, right? It's called the Dunning-Kruger effect, where this overconfidence, based on like, I've been there, done that, or I got this person's number. And it's like, no, not so much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not so much. You don't have it all together.
Yeah. I love the 6-lane highway. I'm going to steal that. That sort of says it all, right? It's all coming at you. It's not just one lane. You got to be making decisions and being aware and being open, right, to all these different things that could be impinging on what you think is reality.
Right. And I think another big mistake, Jenny, which you just made me kind of really think about, is so many people think that this is about changing other people's belief systems, right? And it's not. It's not. And I think people are afraid. The people who are afraid of DEI are like, well, they want me to think differently. They want to change who I am. No, not at all. This isn't about belief systems. This is about behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And this doesn't mean you have to agree with somebody's lifestyle. It doesn't mean you have to agree with their politics. But it does mean you have to treat someone respectfully and value them as a fellow human being.
Right.
And do that well enough to make things copacetic in a work environment so that people don't feel threatened. People don't feel, completely ostracized, right? You have retention. You have people who want to be there.
There you go. Yeah. Ask them, by the way.
What do you have to say about the unfortunate way that most people are kind of getting their media, their understanding, because it's becoming more diverse, right? It's, I was listening to, I think NPR yesterday about, Gen Z, where the first generation, which, has social media in their hands at like age 2.5. And so their whole worlds, or even our worlds, whatever generation we are pretty much handcrafted based on, frankly, our own biases. And so you get, young, middle-aged people in the workforce, and they're, coming into your workshop and they're, well, wait a minute, the world is this way. It's not that way, because that's all they know. And I'm sure there's a great conversation there. But I'm just wondering what you do with people with really strong biases that are so deep they don't even see their biases.
That's what I do. That's what I do with the humor. That's what I do with the stories. That's what I do with the conversation, right? I get to, as I say, blow a lot of minds, but open a lot of minds, right? Because at our core level, we human beings, we all want the same thing. We want to be seen. We want to be heard. We want to be valued. We want to be loved.
Sure.
And when that's the main message, and you give people the steps on how to not only give that, but receive that, that changes everything. And we are very much, all of us at this point, in the headline generation, right? Where we read the headline and that's it. We've made our decision. We don't even read the full article. I can't tell you how many people have come at me mistakenly thinking that I was on one side versus another because they just saw the headline and my name and didn't even read what I had to say.
Wow.
So that's part of the issue, is we're not acting like investigators anymore. We're not being curious. And that's one thing I say, like, there are some DEI practitioners who are like, well, don't ask people questions. That's rude. That's infringing on someone's, And I'm like, we should ask questions. Now, you can be curious and you can be courteous. You don't have to be an a-hole about it, but you can be kind and authentic. But if we stop learning about each other, if we stop being curious, one of the things they say, the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. And that's where we go with no curiosity. We become indifferent to one another. And even hate is a little bit better than indifference, because at least there's a passion there, a passion enough to like be seeing what someone else is doing. To say indifference means you've just pushed them aside. They're no longer even part of your purview. That's going to be the downfall of humanity.
Putting up the walls. It's and I love what that the person who said don't ask questions, or people. I think you're right. We are not as curious as we should be, because to be curious means you're open to those differences. And so I now want to protect myself. And so you're saying, and your work is opening things up for some conversations to happen. because that's how you begin to just get comfortable with the conversation. That's where the problem is. I don't know what to say. I don't know what, so I'm just keeping my mouth shut.
I know, but you guys are making such great points about this new generation who's very much, they're the techies. They're on social media. They're looking at their screens. They're on the tablet. And think about how lacking in conversation, a real dialogue that is.
Yes.
So that's almost a foreign concept for many people. Like it's very hard for many young people to look people in the eyes. And I'm not talking about the people on the spectrum. Like I understand there's a reason for that, but I'm talking about people who do not have a neuro difference, and they're just not comfortable because they haven't had to do it. I mean, I have small children. They don't have tablets. Well, they get them when we go on plane rides, but that's it. Like they don't have access to them. They don't have phones. Truly, I'm going to be the mean mommy. That's all right. But when my kids meet someone else, an adult, they shake their hand. I make them tell them what their name is and how old they are, whatever. I don't make them hug people. Like that's creepy. But I make them be personable.
I want to ask you, what kind of experiences you've had in your workshops? Because it sounds like what you're sharing is like, okay, guys, we're going to talk about biases. So you, sir, or you, ma'am, what are your biases? And the sir or ma'am says, well, wait, I don't want to really share that. No, let's go. I hate green people. I hate tall green people. What kind of freedom do you see yourself unleashing, or things? What kind of experiences are people having in these workshops?
It's transformational. It really is. Because there's so many people think I'm the only one. Right? People think that about so many things, right? Because we are not connected. It's I'm the only one who has an alcoholic in my family. I'm the only one who, has aging parents. I'm the only one who's got a kid with autism. I'm the only one who's struggling with depression. I'm the only one who has, I have to have sugar all the time. No, we're not the only ones at all. And again, at the root of this work is us understanding we have more in common than we don't. While it may not be the exact same thing or experience, we all know what it's like to feel discombobulated, to feel overwhelmed, to feel stressed, to be dismissed. And we also know what it feels like to be included and to have someone extend grace to us and to receive kindness and to be involved, to be asked questions, to be praised for good work. And if we could teach people that it's not that hard, like this isn't hard work. As I say, this is heart work.
Wow.
Good.
Because this is so much. I mean, and there's a neuroscience component to this. The heart is not just a muscle that pumps blood through our bodies. It's a little brain.
Yep.
That has over 40,000 neuroreceptors that think and feel and reason and remember.
And feel pain.
Yes. And so if we can make this heart work and connect the heart and the mind, that's the golden hour, if you will. And what's between the heart and the mind? Our mouths, right?
That dangerous mouth.
But if we can make that connection and then let the mouth be the tool as much as it can be, because listen, 90% of communication isn't even verbal, right? But so much of what we're talking about is, well, so-and-so said this, so-and-so called me that name, so-and-so didn't use that right pronoun. Okay, where was their heart and mind? Was it intentional? Were they trying to hurt you? If so, then maybe there's a space to educate, right? And call people in. We so badly want to feel vindicated right now. Everybody wants to be right. That's another part of the extremism that I was talking about earlier. But if you can let go of that need to be right and just be human, like I think we were joking when we were talking, Mitch, like you can be right or you can be married, right?
What did you say, Mitch?
Right? You can be right or you can be married.
No, I get it from Curb, right? Curb Your Enthusiasm.
No. It's said a lot. Yes.
You're right.
Yeah.
You can be
but
left.
It's like, you can be right or you can have a healthy relationship with someone else.
Sure.
And this need to call people out versus calling them in, that dynamic could change everything. If we were mature enough, thoughtful enough, had the patience enough, took a deep breath before we react. So what I do in my work is I say I want people to care. And CARE is an acronym for conscious empathy, active listening, responsible reactions, and environmental awareness. And if we could just get more people to care about each other and themselves, I think we're on a much, much better path.
Yeah. Well, this has been a beautiful, beautiful podcast. So I'm sure people now are saying, oh my gosh, how can I find Karith and bring her into my life? And how can they do that?
Well, the good news is there are not too many Kariths out there in the world.
That's
So
true.
my handles for most of my social media are at Karith Foster. That's Karith. My website is, well, I have a personal website, which is Karith at karith.com or karith.com. That was my email I just gave, karith.com. And INVERSITY Solutions. So INVERSITY Solutions with the S on the end.com.
INVERSITY Solutions. And for those of you parents out there who are going to have children soon, name your child a name that no one else spells that certain way. Grab that URL and your kid will be good to go.
That's right.
I guess. No, seriously, this has been really illuminating. And, I think it takes a big load off a lot of people who are like, And then, Karith, you help us explore what's going on inside so we can bring people together. And I love that. So thank you, Karith, so much.
Oh, just
Thank
wonderful.
you for having me.
Thank you. And thank you, Ginny. And thank you to all of our incredible listeners. Please absolutely share this episode with your friends, your colleagues, your family, and your Great Danes. And we'll see you next time on our next episode of Team Anywhere. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more engaging content from our podcast. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share the video with your friends so they can join the conversation too.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. Now, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more engaging content from our podcast. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share the video with your friends so they can join the conversation too.